And of course, I'm obsessed with the Mass Effect games, so...
We all know the truth. More connects us than separates us. But in times of crisis, the wise build bridges, while the foolish build barriers.
You raise walls, I destroy them. Let's see who prevails.
Just because something works doesn't mean that it cannot be improved.
I say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
Allow my sword to join you in the fight against evil.
The world needs us to chase dreams.
We have to dedicate ourselves each and every single day to this fight, because I can't do it alone.
You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
Welcome to the Skipping Fantasy Show, an interview with Megan O'Keefe. Say hello, Megan.
Hi, everyone.
And with me as my wingman on this interview is Daniel. Say hello, Daniel.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing okay, and we're here to talk to Megan O'Keefe about her forthcoming novel called Velocity Weapon. So, Megan, I have to ask straight up. So, I know you from steampunk airship action goodness. So, why a space opera?
Well, there's a lot of reasons, actually. So you can kind of take your pick. It's a confluence of things. When I got feedback on the Scorched Continent series, and I saw it being, shelved and marketed, I saw a lot of people saying it was science fantasy, and that I write fantasy like I write science fiction. So that definitely got the idea in my head. And then if you have the physical copy of the book in your hands, you can see that it's dedicated to a friend of mine named Karen Rochnick, who very much encouraged me to write science fiction. And then the sort of cold, hard numbers truth of the fact is that I sent my agent proposals for 5 books, 2 of which were science fiction, and this is the one he picked. So there's a lot of paths to Velocity Weapon.
So did you find this significantly different in terms of the writing process for a space opera compared to like a steampunk science fantasy?
Not necessarily. I mean, they all have their world building. They all have their tropes that you sort of need to be aware of for reader expectation reasons. The basic process is fundamentally the same for me. The voices, of course, vary, but voices vary based on whatever character I'm using at any given time, no matter the setting. So it was fun, actually. It was a lot of fun doing something new.
So the core of the novel is this relationship between the 2 siblings, Biren and Sanda. So how did you decide to develop that relationship, and why a brother-sister pair separated by time and space, as it were? Well,
so the original novel, as I wrote the first draft that Bree, my editor, ended up offering on, was a single point of view. It was just Sanda, the sister in the story, who is the one marooned forward in the future from her family. And when Bree and I were talking about developing it to sort of have a bigger scope and be more operatic, on the operatic slider scale of things and less from the thriller side of things, I really wanted to build in a functional family. It's something that I don't think we see a lot in our fiction, or at least I didn't see a lot of it growing up. I do think we're leaning towards it now, but it's nice to see healthy relationships in a family, people who support each other, love each other. And yeah, they screw up sometimes because we all have our own ideas, and sometimes they're not the right ones for that moment. But I wanted to lean into people who cared for each other in a platonic way. And so that's where I went with the brother.
So before we do get any further, we should ask, I guess, just if you could sort of give a quick summary of what the book is about for people who might not have picked it up already.
Oh, right. So Velocity Weapon starts with Sanda. She's the sister that we were talking about. And she wakes up on an enemy spacecraft that she soon realizes is state of the art. It's new, nothing that her universe has ever seen before. It's piloted by an artificial intelligence that is fairly advanced. And not only is it an enemy ship, she discovers, as the AI tells her, that the war she was fighting, that got her knocked out and put into stasis, ended a little over 200 years ago. And the ending of the war destroyed everything and everyone in that particular solar system, including the FTL gate that would bring her back to civilization. And then the brother, of course, he's back in time during the time period when Sanda goes missing and trying to find her and mitigate that war.
So, I mean, a traditional space opera of 20 years ago, if they were to think to have a brother-sister team, probably would have flipped their roles, had the sister on the planet and the brother as the action hero in space. But what I'm more interested in is Sansa starts off right off with losing her leg, and I was curious as to your choices. And I mean, this is a through line that goes throughout the book of her having to deal with the loss of this limb. I was wondering if you want to talk about how you developed and what the research you did in coming up with people with prosthetics.
Right. So, well, I did a lot of research in prosthetics and robotics and that are being used for prosthetics. And ultimately, for Sanda and her situation, she ended up using something she could fabricate. She's not very good at robotics herself, so she kind of has this makeshift thing that slows her down sometimes, but she learns to work with. And she is a soldier, and she does believe in what she was fighting for. So she has that sort of the grit mentality of just, push through, keep it simple, do what you need to do to get the job done in the right way. And that comes up a lot with her having to cope with this newfound disability. And I pulled a little bit, from my personal experience, I discovered about a year and a half ago now that I had been living with a genetic disability that was misdiagnosed for many, many years. So I was able to draw a lot from my own personal experience for the sort of psychological side of things.
Yeah, one of the themes that I see kind of echoing throughout the novel is sort of doing things to survive, but not compromising oneself in going through that survival. And I see that in many of the characters, whether human or AI. And it's both their choices and sort of it's built into the technology that you have in this world of being able to survive from the very start when Sanda ends up in space through the battle and she's saved by the AI ship eventually, but she's able to survive that experience because of this Neutrogel, I believe it was called, technology. This foam that's basically able to, upon emergency, able to activate and keep her alive. And so sort of what ended up going into your creation of that idea?
So if you'll start to notice, I think, as you're reading the book, that a lot of the technology in it is very branded. It all has brand names, like the Nutribaths are a thing. This is all sort of a extension of the fact that the human species, as we find it in this novel, is multiple hundred years advanced into the future. They are interstellar, but they ended up that way, and you do get this through little flashbacks. So this isn't just my world building brain. They ended up that way because of one corporation spearheaded by one person, and what resulted was a society that they had to struggle to survive in space, of course, absolutely. But they were very focused on finding whatever they thought the cleanest solution was at the time, and maybe not adjusting it to benefit all people equally. And that's something that comes up through sort of a halfway point of view that appears a little less often than the brother and sister. So that's why you see things like the Nutribath and stuff like that, is they are all brands of this corporation that has become the dominant governing body in the universe at this point.
So I was going to ask you about those flashbacks to the beginning of basically humanity dealing with space. I was curious as to why build those in explicitly rather than having the reader have to tease them out? And I mean, Alexandra's an interesting character for the little bit we get to see her. I was just curious as to the breaking of the point of view from the twins, and also then we'll talk later about the heist bit. But curious as to that far backward flash, as it were, why build it in that way?
So the book and sort of by extension the trilogy itself is fairly structurally complex when it comes to timelines, and I wanted to do sort of like that far past flashback for a lot of reasons. It signals some deceptions that come up in the world later on, and I bring it all the way through the third book, so you'll see a bit more of that character and how that world came to be and how those power structures fell into place. And those have very far-reaching resonant effects on the actual events taking place in the first novel and in the second and third, of course.
I see, you're braiding. Well, I do want to talk about deception, but not quite yet. We'll have to put up a spoiler wall for that. But so we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Yes. But going off of what we're talking about, or Paul mentioned these interludes from the point of view of Alexandra. One of the later chapters in the book, without spoilers, is another interlude that is from the point of view of a journalist, Callie.
I loved Callie.
And I love this, and it gets back to one of your comments that you made earlier that I thought was great in terms of showing families that are very supportive and sort of a positive view of that. This was also a case where, as I was reading and the scenes where Callie kind of comes up, I thought, wow, it's nice to see a journalist that's just not corrupt or self-serving and out for the betterment of selfish endeavors, but actually seems genuinely concerned for things. And so I was somewhat surprised that there was this interlude that was from her point of view, but oddly enough, I was really excited about that. And so is that another thing that's sort of braiding in for future?
Yeah, you will see more of Callie, okay. Definitely. And I wanted to start to explore, like I said, this is functionally a totalitarian government. They're a corporation that grew too big for their britches. And a lot of that, it stifles media. Of course it does. And Callie is on a slow burn path to running up hard against that, big time in book 2, actually. Just fresh on my mind because I was just writing some of those scenes.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to, if I had just had Sanda and Baron's point of view in there, then the universe of Prime, that Prime, the corporation, ended up creating, doesn't look too bad. They're generally start out as middle-class people in their life, and they are fairly upwardly mobile. They have the connections they need to get the jobs and the positions they want. And things absolutely go sideways because of the war, but Prime still would have looked pretty shiny, and if it had just been their points of view, and it is certainly not.
The Keepers, though, at least don't really come through unscathed. Like, you get the sense of the corruption amongst those that are governing running the empire, as it were. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The way they treat Baron. And it's like, well, let's put you in front because we figure, you're good sacrifices in the sense. At least that's the sense I got.
Yeah, we'll paint the target on your back. Yeah, basically.
So how did you develop the corporate world politics that we see with the Keepers, and that Baron gets thrown into the shark? I mean, he's already a Keeper Star, but he gets thrown in the Shark Tank when he gets put in a leadership position for his pains in finding out what's going on in his search for remnants of the battle and his sister.
So, the series ended up being called the Protectorate, which is sort of the inner core of the Keepers, who are this overarching governing body. And the sort of focus of Prime as a company and then as a government was to protect the knowledge of what it takes to build the Casimir gates, which allow them to transverse in an interstellar manner. It is gated FTL, basically. So the corporation itself is incredibly secretive, and incredibly insular, and that breeds a lot of conspiracy, a lot of like secrets within secrets and that kind of thing. And that, you know, if that is the core of your society, is that mentality that we must protect these secrets, this information, which I generally feel information should be shared widely. But if they really believe they have to protect these ideas and keep them secreted, that's just going to have ripple effects across the entire civilization.
So these secrets, information, technology, they all, and even the timelines of the novel, lend it to becoming something that is just very highly structured. There's a great deal of complexity to the novel, yet as I've read it, I'm flying through it. And partially that's because chapters are relatively short. There's a lot of action. You're just constantly going. You're invested in the main characters. So that sort of balances the complexity of the structure of it. But I'm curious if that was always the structure that you had for the book from the very get-go. You mentioned before, like, really originally the draft was from one point of view. If that's the case, was there also not this inherent structure and secrets and surprises and twists and turns?
So the surprises and twists that I believe you're thinking of were in place, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very much structured, sort of as a political thriller, I suppose you could say, originally speaking. And when Breit and I were talking about the expansion, I was very dug into the fact that I wanted to keep that pacing. I wanted to keep it tight. I didn't want a lot of the sort of bloat that you get with worlds this large. I mean, it is extremely difficult to convey all the information you need effectively while still keeping things tight and moving along quickly. So that was definitely a balancing act to strike, and I hope I did it, but we'll see.
And in the midst of this, you threw in a heist subplot on a completely different planet. So what was that? I was a little confused at first, especially before the spoiler that we still haven't exactly explicitly talked about. It was like, well, what does this have to do with A or B? I was trying to figure it out for the longest while. So you wrote a heist narrative on a completely different planet with completely different characters. So what was the? I mean, you said that this started with Sandus. So why braid in a heist narrative here?
So that particular character does come back, of course, and the thing she is interacting with at the end of her chapters, which I won't say for spoiler reasons, is incredibly important to multiple conspiracies in the overarching plot. Sort of from a craft perspective, what adding that character allowed me to do was not only to explore sort of the lower societal echelons of the world. I mean, she comes from a very rough place. She does not have any of the support structures in place that people with a healthy family from the middle class would have. And she also interacts with a character towards the end of her chapters who is sort of a blink and you miss it if she's just in Sanda's chapters. You'll be very surprised when she comes back and does certain things in book 2. But she is explicitly in the third character. Her name is Jules. She's explicitly in Jules's chapters. Mm-hmm. And that definitely takes away the blink and you miss it moment. And it also adds the sort of layers on the nefarious nature of the conspiracies that are going on.
I see. I start to see where you're going with this. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm dancing very carefully here.
Yes.
Says sell us a space opera, but instead, yeah, you have other gears twirling around in here. I should not have been surprised given the scorched continent, but still.
Yeah, I like to complicate matters, I suppose.
Yes, you do.
But the layering and the complications work really well, I think.
Oh, thank you.
And so Jules's chapters, I was also originally at first sort of baffled and, okay, how does this all fit in exactly? But one, I like the character, but then also one of the things you mentioned brought to mind something I did appreciate, because without Jules, we don't get that picture of sort of the downside to the Protectorate. And I think, I mean, I just literally read this maybe like a hour ago, but in one of her later sections, she sort of muses and is looking at the sort of slums, as it were, the more rundown aspects of this planet, and wondering, why does it have to be this way? And all the other characters that we see, whether from sort of the Protectorate or from the planet that is their enemies in this novel, they're mostly well-to-do people in the upper reaches of society and power. And so that perspective in here, even though there are these chapters are scattered throughout, they really add a lot of flavor and depth to the world, I think, beyond just what you're getting from the main chapters. Yeah. So I appreciated that.
Oh, good. Yeah. I grew up poor. Well, I grew up in poverty, basically, myself. So it was important to me to sort of have that, the grounding narrative that, everything looks shiny on the surface, but it's not. And it's actually affecting real people in real time. So.
Sure. So, I mean, we kind of glossed over, we didn't actually talk about them as a character, but I wanted you to talk a little bit about the Light of Barossa, i.e. Barrow, and having an AI as a character and developing an AI as a non-human but as an intelligent character with definite goals and, well, shall we say, agenda.
Yeah. Yeah, Barrow does not want what you would expect him to want if you were anthropomorphizing a spaceship. And that bites certain people in the butt as time goes on. He's an interesting character. He was there. So just from, general understanding of AI, the world itself only has sort of the base levels of AI that we have right now in our world. It's considerably advanced, of course, but they're all specialized. They all do one thing really well. They run your house, they pilot your spaceship, they do one thing. And Barrow is the first of his kind in that he is a generalized artificial intelligence. He has the full thinking capacity of a human. He can engage with multiple things at any given time, can learn new things, and has access to everything a human would have to learn with. He can get into the net, he can interact with other humans, and he can do it very, very, very quickly because he is, a synthetic being. And he's a lot of fun, specifically because the people who made him weren't really 100% on the about what they were doing, and they tried to sort of raise him emotionally as you would a person, and it backfires in spectacular ways. So,
well, the people on the ship do a whole bunch of things which we get revealed that Daniel may not have read yet entirely. And the last is like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah, they're up to a lot on that ship.
They're up to a lot and some really questionable ethical choices on their
Wait,
part.
I only have like 40 pages left. Are there still even more surprises coming?
Maybe. But okay, I'm going to declare listeners there's going to be a spoiler wall because I want to talk to Megan about a couple of things that happened in this book that...
Well, actually, right before that, I don't know if this will be before or after, so actually Megan can choose. I just did a course at my college. I taught one called Biology and Fiction, and one of the main topics we had this semester was artificial intelligence, so emulating conscious sentience in machines and the implications and extent of that. So I'm curious how you end up falling in your own beliefs in this. Is this something to fear? Is this something that is promise and you look forward to? Is it a combination of both? Because there were definitely opinions in my class. But...
Yeah, it depends on what day you ask me, to be perfectly honest, and how nihilistic I'm feeling at the moment. So I live in Silicon Valley, right? I live adjacent to Silicon Valley, I should say. And I have a lot of friends who work in neural nets and things like that. And we are, as it stands right now, we are nowhere near having to worry about anything. Our AIs are really not very smart at the moment. But if we advance very, very quickly, if there's a breakthrough moment and we get ahead of ourselves before we figured out the human rights issues that come with creating something that sort of solves the hard problem of consciousness, which is its own bag of worms regarding what actually is consciousness and what isn't. But if we actually get past this point, and yet, yes, this is a generalized intelligence, or yes, this is even bigger and it is a super intelligence, it is entirely possible we will have a very short war. But but that's the nihilist in me. So
okay, fair enough. Okay, so spoiler wall.
Spoiler wall. Spoiler wall. Spoiler wall. If you're the kind of person that wants to be surprised when reading a book, you might want to stop listening for a couple of minutes. Otherwise we're going to spoil a major revelation in the novel. A couple of major revelations in the novel, maybe. Hopefully, I'm not going to spoil Daniel here.
That's all right.
He's got 40 pages left. He's probably okay.
He's probably okay. So I should have seen that she was actually in the present all along. I kicked myself for not seeing it sooner.
Yeah.
So I saw it, but only because of the very last line on the back of the advanced reading copy galley of, however, Bureau may not be telling exactly the whole truth. So I kind of went in suspicious. Is that line going to be on the actual?
Yeah, so that line is on the UK copies, I think. It's not on the US version.
Interesting.
Yeah,
and I do think it is a little bit loaded, but.
Mm-hmm. And I had a digital version, so I didn't see that line at all. So I'm going in. I didn't have the idea that'd be a Barrow's. Right. I knew that Barrow might have an agenda, but let's keep her from the fact that she's actually in the present was not really on my menu of what he was up to. I mean, when they start heading towards the space station, it's like, oh, after they pick up the quote other survivor, I thought, okay, something's odd here.
Yeah.
Did Barrow plant this person? I wasn't thinking like, oh no, we're actually in the present, and then of course this person is not only a survivor, he's actually working for paid by her brother. Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you're really layering in all the intrigue here.
Yeah, it was tricky to keep it from. Well, you know how it is to balance, make sure that there are little hints throughout the book that on reread, you can see it. Like, the reader can see that, yes, this was coming all along, but without hanging a big red flag on all of them. So
I did like how you were crossing out the dates to the right date once things became clear, just in case the reader missed it. Like, okay, now we're going for the right date now. It's like, okay.
Yeah, that was a fun little typographical choice. I liked that.
I did like that.
Yeah, at first, because of that line on the back, at first, as I was reading it, I picked up on a lot of those clues, I think, such as blocking out the light from the star through the view screen that Sonda that she views everything through. And there's one moment where she thinks she sees actually her home system, or home planet and station, but then, doubts herself. And so once I got to that reveal, I was somewhat disappointed, like, oh, it went exactly as I expected it to. But even with that, there's so many other things to this that the disappointment or the sadness was not very long-lived. So I think it's still safe.
Yeah, I'm curious how the UK readers are going to react to that versus the US readers, because that line is pretty loaded. It definitely sets you up to doubt Barrow from the beginning. So
right.
And here I was thinking this could be the last two survivors of a war bonding together, and no, not so much.
Yeah, it's definitely a different book after that point.
Oh, okay, I will tell you what I thought was going to happen before that revelation. I thought, like, okay, because we see the events on the other planet, so I was thinking, okay, what's going to happen is they're going to Santa's finally going to get into sleep. They're going to go into the system, and it's their arrival in the system that the heist winds up getting tangled up with. That We're going to have a jump forward in time But no, that's not quite how that works.
It was another sort of structural reason for the third point of view there, because whenever you're reading 2 points of views, you expect them to intersect, right? So you throw a third wild card in there, and you don't know which one's going to intersect with which one, in theory.
Right. It's another spoiler, as it were, but the interludes from Alexandra make it clear, I guess, that this technology that has given birth to the Protectorate and the ability to have this FTL gate technology and the Keeper chip technology that they have implanted in their heads, all of that's linked to alien technology.
All stolen alien tech, I see.
Yes, which there's sort of conspiracy universes, which I loved, within sort of this, future universe that there's these conspiracy theories that their civilization or that the Protector is built upon alien technology that some people consider just fringe ideas. And so I really love that concept. And so I'm guessing the series is going to end up further exploring those connections of the alien tech as well.
Yeah, so after book one, it kind of, you kick the lid off of a lot of what is going on. There are still quite a few more reveals coming, but it does go into the fact that, a lot of the society's problems are about to come from the fact that they have built something without understanding fully what it is. And sort of throughout, this is not something that I wanted to sort of do the blatant Chekhov's gun, put it on the mantle thing in the first book. But there is the question of, well, we're opening these gates, we're finding systems that we can open more gates from and jumping around and all this, and the universe is looking pretty empty.
Right.
And that's weird. It's weird if you're just a normal citizen who just kind of knows that, we invented the gates and humanity's awesome and everything's great. And it's extremely weird if you know, the truth of the gates. Because
right.
Where
they came from originally. Right.
Right. So that definitely will come up.
Okay.
So a more general question I like to ask writers is, so what space operas do you like to read? What may have subconsciously, if anything, influenced your writing of the novel?
So I tend to, when I'm writing something, I tend to avoid reading things that are exactly in its genre. So previous to, years ago, when I was younger, not even writing it, I read, Fire Upon the Deep and Werner Vinge, and I really enjoyed those. And more recently, I've been really into Peter Watts, actually. So the Blind Sight novel was particular favorite of mine. And then I'm not sure if I want to call them space opera or not, but the Binti trilogy. They're novellas and they're very tight. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Nettie would call them space operas. We have things on ships and on alien planets and also on Earth, but yeah.
Right, yeah. Sort of like the setting is very, very space opera, so. And of course, more recently also Becky Chambers, her stuff is great. What else have I been reading lately that I really, Murderbot, of course. Everybody loves
Murderbot.
Yeah. You gotta love Murderbot. Yeah, right. And other than that, I've been rereading a lot of Shirley Jackson for some reason. It's what's working for me right now. And of course, I'm obsessed with the Mass Effect games, so.
That makes a lot of sense, given this.
Yeah.
I think it was Bert who said that this novel felt like Mass Effect meets The Expanse.
Yeah, that Brit tagged it as that immediately, and I was all right. I am quite happy to live with that label. So.
Okay, so thank you so much, Megan, for coming back to Skipping Fantasy after a number of years to talk about your new novel. I'm very happy to see that it's going to be a trilogy. I'm going to get much more twisty space opera goodness from a very fascinating pair of sibling protagonists.
That is one of the nice things when a publisher buys the sequels all at once. You know how many books you have, and you can really make it a proper arc and and raise questions, without worrying about it being dropped mid-series or something like that. So.
Yes, so thank you. I'm particularly excited about this one. I've really enjoyed reading it. And one of the things we didn't get to, but I remember being in Paul's notes, was the matter of info dump. And you mentioned it before, sort of putting in information about the world, both the past and the future president. I think you did a remarkable job getting it in there and making it flow. And I think in large part that's because of the braiding of these complexities and secrets and these different plot elements together. It ends up working. It ends up working really well. So I'm excited to see that's going to continue in the future books as well.
Yeah, I'm a real big fan of the fact that every story looks different depending on who's viewing it. So I like to have multiple viewpoints in there, sort of illuminate all sides.
I do think it works. Yeah, I figured when she was talking about the seeding of other stuff that she had answered my question. But yes. So listeners, if you like what you hear, you can support us at Patreon. It's Patreon.com/SkippingFantasy. You can find us on SkippingFantasy.com, on Facebook and on Twitter, and you can support the show and more conversations like this with Megan, who was once again, thank you very much for being on the show tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love you guys, so I'm always happy to come back.
And with that, listeners, stay frosty and scene.
Awkward ending.
If you would like to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/SkiffyandFanty or find us on Twitter at SkiffyandFanty, our webpage, SkiffyandFanty.com, or you can even send us an email at SkiffyandFanty@gmail.com. The intro music for this podcast was taken from Rock Thing by Creo. You can find out more about their music on freemusicarchive.org.